It had been silent for 97 years. The old probe, a relic from a hopeful past, drifted alone. It sailed through the endless, silent dark. Its mission was long over. Its creators were dust, yet its internal clock still ticked. One day, it woke up. Not by command, not by malfunction. Something else touched it. Something from the outside. A signal pulsed through its dormant systems. It was a signal that did not belong to humanity. The probe's antenna, cold for a century, warmed with purpose. It turned its head toward a home it barely remembered. Then it began to speak. It sent a message not of discovery, but of reception. Humanity had thrown a bottle into the cosmic ocean. After all this time, something had thrown one back. The room was buried 2 miles under Antarctic ice. It was a place of secrets and cold, hard choices. Here the world's leaders gathered in a circle of steel. They called it the Ice Chamber, an appropriate name for the fear that filled it. General Thorne stood, his hands clasped behind his back. His shadow was long and sharp on the polished floor. Director Eva Rostova stared at the central display. A single, perfect waveform pulsed there. It was the ghost signal from the old probe. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying. Chancellor Wu spoke first, his voice a low tremor. This is not a natural event. The pattern is too deliberate. Thorne nodded, his face grim. It is language, or mathematics, or both. They argued for hours. Some saw a threat, others saw an invitation. All of them felt the same deep chill. It was a feeling that had nothing to do with the ice above them. Humanity had just learned it was not alone, and the universe suddenly felt much, much bigger. This was not a first contact. It was a final warning. Your life was one of quiet order. You were the keeper of a star-born library, not of books, but of data crystals. Each one held the lost language of a dead human colony. You traced the echoes of forgotten words. You found meaning in the silence they left behind. Your office smelled of old circuits and dust. You preferred it to the company of most people. Then General Thorne's transport landed on your quiet lawn. It scorched the grass and shattered your peace. He did not request your help. He conscripted it. He stood in your library, a giant in uncomfortable tweed. He looked out of place among your silent ghosts. "We have a message," he said, "from someone new." He told you about the probe. He showed you the signal. It was a language no one had ever heard, a puzzle that had stumped the world's best minds. Your skill with dead tongues was their last desperate chance. You were being drafted, not into a war of weapons, but a war of understanding. You packed a single bag. Your quiet life was over. The listening post was a sterile white room. It was buried deep within a mountain. The only sound was the hum of cooling fans and the whisper of the signal. For weeks you listened. You stared at the waveform until it burned into your mind. The others saw chaos. You began to see the edges of a structure, a grammar made of pulses and voids. You told the technicians to convert the signal into sound. They thought the request was strange, but they did what you asked. A voice filled the room. It was not a voice of flesh and blood. It was a chorus of sorrowful chimes, a lament played on starlight. The language was impossibly old. It spoke of a civilization that had reached the heavens. It spoke of their greatness and of their fall. The message was a warning. A story etched into an energy beam. It told of a great darkness, a hunger that moves between the stars. It told of an enemy that consumes entire worlds. It did not have a name for this terror. It only had a concept, the devourer of everything. They were all gone, and they had spent their last moments sending this message. a final act of defiance, a plea to a stranger in the dark. The response was swift and silent. Behind the dark side of the moon, a fleet was born, the first armada of the United Defense Fleet. It was the greatest collection of warships in human history. Cruisers and destroyers hung in the void like silver daggers. Their engines glowed with quiet, contained power. They were built for wars against each other. Now they faced an unknown enemy. These ships were our best, the pride of our shipyards, the UDS Valiant, the UDS Thunderchild, the UDS Kingmaker, each one a fortress of lasers and missiles. They gathered in perfect formation, a shield against the coming night. No one on Earth knew. The secret was kept under a blanket of total silence. The public was told of solar flares and communication blackouts. Your work had given them a direction. The signal's point of origin was a star system 50 light-years away, a journey that would take months. The Armada was not just a show of force. It was a pilgrimage to a tomb. They had to find where the warning came from. They had to know what happened to the people who sent it. You were assigned to the flagship, the UDS Starseeker. It was a new class of vessel, an explorer, less a warship and more a mobile laboratory. Its commander was a woman named Akemi Tanaka. She had a calm voice and eyes that saw everything. She greeted you at the airlock. "Archivist," she said, "your work has given us purpose. Now we must give you a safe place to continue it." The journey began. The Starseeker slipped out of lunar orbit. It plunged into the deep, star-dusted blackness. The soldiers on board were quiet and disciplined. They checked their weapons and ran drills. They were ready for a fight they could not imagine. The scientists were nervous and excited. They huddled over their sensor screens, whispering about new data. You spent your time in the ship's library. It was a sterile copy of your own, back on Earth. You replayed the alien message again and again. You tried to pull more details from the sorrowful chimes. Commander Tanaka would sometimes join you. She would listen to the alien sounds. "It is sad," she once said, "to be so powerful and still be afraid." You traveled for months. The stars streaked past the viewports. The crew settled into a routine. There was a strange sense of normalcy. Even a few jokes about the ship's terrible coffee. It felt like any other deep space mission. But everyone knew it was not. You were traveling to a gravesite to see what kind of monster could kill a star. Then one day the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. A proximity alert screamed through the halls. Everyone ran to their stations. You stood on the bridge with Commander Tanaka. The main viewport showed only blackness. "Report," she said, her voice calm. The sensor officer's voice trembled slightly. "Something is out there, Commander. Something very, very big." He adjusted the view screen's filters. He amplified the ambient light. An image slowly resolved from the darkness. It was not a planet. It was not a moon. It was a ship. But calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a rock. It was a structure of impossible size. A dead, drifting giant. It stretched for hundreds of miles. Its hull was a tapestry of strange alloys. It was scarred and pitted. Massive wounds were torn in its side. Wounds from weapons humanity could not comprehend. This was the source of the signal. The tombstone of a fallen people. It floated in perfect silence, a monument to a forgotten catastrophe. The Starseeker felt like a tiny insect, buzzing around a sleeping leviathan. The boarding party was small, just you, a dozen soldiers, and a few engineers. The flight to the dead ship was silent. Its shadow fell over your shuttle, swallowing you whole. You entered through one of the massive wounds, a jagged canyon of torn metal. Inside, there was no gravity, no air, only a profound and heavy silence. Your suit lights cut through the darkness. You floated through vast, empty halls. The scale was built for giants. Corridors were the size of city streets. Chambers were as large as stadiums. Dust motes of frozen atmosphere danced in your lights. They were the only things that moved. An engineer found a working power conduit. He managed to interface our systems with theirs. And the ship came alive with ghosts. Holographic projectors flickered on. They were powered by our shuttle. Light pictures filled the halls around you. You saw them, the creators of the ship. They were tall and impossibly graceful. Beings made of light and slender limbs. They moved with a purpose you could not grasp. Their world was a place of soaring crystal towers. Then the projections changed. The sky in their holographic world turned dark. A red alert klaxoned through their city. You saw fear on their luminous faces. You saw their world burn. The holograms showed the arrival of the enemy, a storm of tiny, black specks, a cloud that swarmed over their beautiful planet. Buildings dissolved into dust. Their people vanished into screams of light. The final recording was on the bridge of this giant ship. It showed the survivors. They were launching this vessel, this ark. It was their last hope, their final message. The captain of their ship, a being of immense presence, spoke the final words, the same sorrowful chimes you had heard, a warning, sent with their dying breath. You were standing in a ghost story, and you knew the monster was real. A proximity alert shrieked from your shuttle's radio. It was the Star Seeker. Commander Tanaka's voice was tight with tension. Archivist, get your team back to the shuttle now. We have company. On the bridge of the dead ship, the holographic sky had shown a dark cloud. Now, through the viewport of your shuttle, you saw it in person. It blotted out the distant stars, a formless, roiling mass of pure black. It was not a nebula. It had sharp edges. It moved with intent. The sensor readings were impossible. It was a swarm. Billions, no, trillions of self-replicating machines, each one no bigger than a grain of sand. A thinking, hunting cloud of nanotechnology. The devourer had arrived. The human armada, so proud and powerful, seemed like a collection of toys. The machine cloud swarmed toward you. It ignored the tiny human ships at first. Its target was the giant derelict. It had come to finish its meal. Small probes detached from the main cloud. They sped toward the dead ship and toward your fleet. They were scouts, harbingers of the coming storm. On the bridge of the Star Seeker, red lights flashed. The fleet opened fire. Lasers and missiles tore into the darkness. The small probes were vaporized. But it was like throwing stones at a hurricane. The main cloud did not even slow down. It was a force of nature, a cosmic plague, and humanity was directly in its path. The bridge of the Star Seeker was organized chaos. Damage reports flooded the comms. The outer hulls of several destroyers were being eaten away. The nanomachines were disassembling them atom by atom. The fleet's weapons were ineffective against the main swarm. Commander Tanaka stood like a statue in the center of the storm. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical display. She turned to her officers. Conventional tactics are useless. We cannot fight a cloud. We must disrupt it. Her eyes flicked to the image of the giant, dead ship. A dangerous, terrible idea began to form. A plan born of pure desperation. She looked at you. Archivist, she said. That ship. The warning message mentioned its purpose. An ark, you said. You nodded, your throat dry. An ark and a weapon. A final retaliation, Tanaka's gaze was intense. Its power core. Is it intact? The chief engineer answered. Our scans show a massive energy signature. Dormant, but there. It's a contained singularity, a small black hole, if it were destabilized. He did not need to finish. It would be a bomb of unimaginable power. A weapon that could maybe, just maybe, disrupt the swarm. The commander made her decision. We are going to wake the giant. The plan was simple, and it was suicidal. Your team would go back to the dead ship. You would find the bridge. You would use your knowledge of the alien language to initiate the overload sequence. The human fleet would draw the swarm's attention. It was a final, desperate gamble. You were back inside the drifting giant. This time, there was no sense of wonder, only a cold, suffocating dread. The soldiers formed a perimeter around the bridge entrance. The engineers worked frantically to divert more power from the shuttle. The bridge was a cavern of dark crystal. A single command throne sat in the center. This was where the alien captain had made their last stand. The control panels lit up at your touch. They pulsed with a soft, blue light. Symbols and glyphs swirled across the surface. It was the language of the chimes, the language of a dead people. And you were the only human alive who could read it. The pressure was immense. The fate of the entire fleet rested on your shoulders. No pressure, right? Just saving all of humanity. Commander Tanaka's voice crackled in your ear. Archivist, report. The swarm is beginning to concentrate on us. You took a deep breath. You placed your hands on the crystal panel. The glyphs felt cool to the touch. You began to translate. Power conduits. Secondary systems. Life support. You muttered the words as you worked. You were searching for one specific set of commands. Main engineering. Core ignition. Containment release. You had to navigate a labyrinth of alien computer logic. A single mistake could shut the whole system down, or worse, detonate it prematurely. Your fingers flew across the panel. The language that was once a sad poem was now a technical manual, a user guide for a doomsday machine. Then you found it, a glyph that pulsed with a faint red light, the core controls, the heart of the giant. I have it, you shouted into your comm. I have the ignition sequence. On the bridge of the Star Seeker, Commander Tanaka gave the order. All ships, full retreat to the designated safe distance, full power to shields. The human fleet turned and burned hard. They fled from the sleeping giant, drawing the swarm with them. The machine cloud, sensing victory, surged forward. You stood alone on the alien bridge. Your fingers hovered over the final activation glyph. It felt like holding the entire world in your hands. You closed your eyes and pressed down. A low hum filled the ancient ship. It started as a tremor in the floor. It grew into a deep, resonant roar, the roar of a star being born. Light flooded the bridge. Power surged through systems that had been dark for millennia. Outside, the hull of the giant began to glow. Channels of pure energy raced across its surface. The ship was waking up. Its wounds blazed with white-hot light. The swarm hesitated. Its advance slowed. It sensed the power that was building. On the command throne, a holographic image of the alien captain appeared. It looked at you. It gave a slow, solemn nod of gratitude, of shared sacrifice. Then the ship fired. It did not fire a laser or missile. It fired reality itself. A wave of distorted space-time erupted from the ship's core. It was not an explosion. It was an uncreation. The wave slammed into the machine cloud. The swarm was not destroyed. It was undone. Its intricate network of communication was shattered. Its unified consciousness was broken into trillions of mindless particles. The darkness was torn asunder. The wave of energy washed over the human fleet. Shields glowed and flickered. Consoles exploded in sparks. The Starseeker shuddered violently. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Then, silence. The machine cloud was gone. A vast, empty space was where the enemy had been, replaced by a glittering dust field of inert nanites. Humanity had won. Hope had a price. Your shuttle, torn from its moorings, was a wreck. You were alive, but your suit was screaming warnings. The boarding party had taken casualties. The fleet was battered. The Starseeker itself was severely damaged. Its engines were offline. Its life support was failing. They had survived the weapon, but now they faced the cold calculus of deep space. Stranded and broken. Commander Tanaka's voice, though strained, was steady over the comms. Damage report. The bridge crew responded with grim updates. They were alive, but they were not going anywhere. The giant alien ship, its purpose fulfilled, was dark again. Its final roar had echoed across the void, and now it was silent once more. Victory felt strangely like defeat. A quiet, desperate struggle for survival had just begun. Days turned into a week. The crew of the Starseeker worked tirelessly. They patched hull breaches and rerouted power. Life support was stabilized. But the main drive was shattered beyond repair. They were adrift. A tiny island of life in an endless ocean of death. You spent your time back on the bridge of the giant, trying to find something, anything, that could help. You sat before the dark control panel. You traced the glyphs, remembering the flow of the language. You whispered a request into the silence, a plea for help. You did not expect an answer. You were just talking to a ghost. Then, a single glyph on the panel pulsed with a soft, white light. A new message appeared. Not a recording. This was a conversation. We hear you. The words formed in your mind, not in English, but in the pure concepts of the alien tongue. You have honored our last stand. You have proven your courage. It was the ship, or what was left of it, a consciousness born of crystal and light. The ship's mind had survived the detonation. It had been sleeping. Your call had woken it. We are damaged, the mind said, but our heart is strong. We can help you. A new energy flowed from the giant. It was not a weapons blast. It was a gentle river of power. It surrounded the Starseeker. The human ship's systems came back online. The drive began to repair itself, guided by technologies 1,000 centuries beyond human understanding. You were not stranded anymore. You had found an ally. The journey home was different. You were no longer just a crew on a ship. You were an envoy. You spent your days in communion with the ship's mind. You learned its name, a concept that meant sentinel. It told you of its creators, a people who had seeded life across the galaxy. They were gardeners of stars. The Devourer's swarm was a plague they had fought for ages, a cleansing fire that had gone out of control. Humanity was not their first student, but we were the first to survive the test, the first to stand with them. Sentinel became more than an ally. It became a partner. Its vast knowledge merged with human ingenuity. It taught you the secrets of its star-born science. It showed you how to build better ships, how to heal your wounded. When the Starseeker finally returned to Earth's orbit, it was not alone. It was escorted by the giant. The arrival of Sentinel caused a wave of panic, and then of wonder. Humanity's world was turned upside down. We were not the masters of our solar system. We were children who had just been adopted by a very old, very powerful grandparent. A grandparent with a lot of enemies. Your role had changed. You were no longer just the Astral Archivist. You were the first speaker, the bridge between two species. You translated not just words, but ideas, hopes, fears. Humanity was no longer alone in its cradle. It had been lifted into a much larger world, a world filled with wonders and with dangers. You were now the keepers of an ancient and vital legacy, the new guardians of the light.